At MBNK, our mission is to deliver factual and independent reporting every month. We focus on the story that matters most, contrasting global events with the foundational truth of the kingdom. Our goal is to keep you informed with intriguing updates and the most impactful headlines from around the world. So let's dive right into the month's editor special pick. Kickstarting with national news coverage. On agenda, we have the DC Gala shooting suspect, NASA Artemis II mission, Operation Epiphany update, US Congress resignation, and aliens with aliens, UFOs, fired King Charles III and Queen Camilla US visit. On April Fool Days, the United States shifted the humor with historic national event. NASA announcing a landmark space launch, Artemis II. For the first time in over half century, humans head to the moon. NASA's Artemis II mission blasted off from Florida Space Coast on Wednesday evening on April 2nd, with 4 astronauts on board on a 10-day voyage that deemed to take them around the far side of the moon and back to Earth. Did they touch the ground on the moon or not? Let us hear the report from Eric Dubé. Thank you.
Continues to release new images and videos from their latest moon mission, exposing themselves more with each one. Meanwhile, backpedaling space fantasy fanboys are working overtime, making excuses for all the anomalies and inconsistencies. Let's start with a quick slideshow of some of the new Earth and Moon images being given to the public, claimed to be real, handheld photographs taken by astronauts through windows in a rocket flying at speeds between 3,000 and 22,000 miles per hour. Most things filmed outside through your car window going just 65 miles per hour are a blur. Yet NASA never seems to have this problem, even at the incredible speeds they claim to attain. To a discerning eye, the colors, lighting, and textures in these pictures are all very synthetic and unrealistic, looking much more like CGI than actual photography. Here is actual video of the moon taken from Earth by a Nikon P900 super zoom camera. We can see the moon's color, lighting, and textures from Earth in amazing detail with just an 83 times zoom camera, which first of all suggests the moon isn't 240,000 miles away as claimed, but also shows how unnatural and unrealistic the new Artemis images actually are. Even AI bots that are trained to detect and differentiate real photographs from CGI are claiming the new NASA images are fake. In 2026, with the level of realism that CGI, AI, and deepfake technologies have achieved, to see these images and not be at least a little suspicious if they could possibly be fake is frankly disingenuous and gullible beyond belief. Let's look at this image called A Setting Earth. Notice how clear the craters, shadows, and subtle textures appear. It looks like the camera is only a few dozen or at most a few hundred miles away from the moon's surface, being generous. NASA claims, however, that at its nearest, Artemis II was never any closer than 4,000 miles away from the moon. Now let's compare that with the following Apollo 11 image from 1969, where the astronauts were supposedly only 60 miles away from the lunar surface. Look at the difference in detail between 60 miles away and 4,000 miles away. Why does everything look far more textured and detailed from 4,000 miles away than it does from 60? Could it be because photo fakery has come a long way since the 60s, and it actually has nothing to do with their supposed distance from the moon? Notice how much more detailed the lighting, shadows, textures, and contrast are on the Artemis moon images. Also, as a quick aside, if all of these moon craters were supposedly created by meteor impacts hitting the surface, how is it even remotely possible that every single meteor arrives at a straight 90 degrees above the surface's zenith? Every crater is a perfect circle, None of them are oblong or elongated, as they would have to be if meteors were actually striking from all angles. Now let's look at this image, called a distant crescent of home. Notice, first of all, the wonky shape and how both the tiny Earth and the Moon appear to be smushed from top to bottom. This is similar to the effect seen during the live stream, when during one section of time, the Moon drastically changed shape from a circle to a potato. In this image, the crew was allegedly 40,000 miles away from the lunar surface and 252,000 miles away from Earth. Earth's diameter is supposedly 4 times wider than the Moon, while visually, in this picture, the Moon's diameter is at least 4 times wider than the Earth. Being generous, it actually appears 5 or 6 times. Now, doing the math, 252,000 divided by 40,000 is 6.3, meaning the crew was 6.3 times closer to the Moon than the Earth. But for an object that's actually 4 times smaller to appear 4 times larger, the observer must be situated 16 times closer to the smaller object. In this case, however, Artemis is only 6.3 times closer to the Moon than Earth. That is a factor of over 10x discrepancy between the relative size and alleged distances of these two objects and the camera. The Earth should appear considerably larger in this picture. Now compare it back with the setting Earth picture we analyzed first. Here we are supposedly 4,000 miles from the lunar surface and approximately 243,000 miles away from Earth. So compared to the last image, where the crew was 252,000 miles away from Earth, here the crew is only 9,000 miles closer to Earth than in that image. That is a factor of approximately 4%, meaning the size of the Earth should only change a maximum of 4% between the two pictures. In reality, however, and you can measure this for yourself with a ruler and the original NASA.gov images, the Earth changes size a factor of over 1,000% between the two pictures. The Earth is only 4% closer in the second image, but yet appears 1,000% larger. There was a similar size discrepancy in the images sent from Artemis claimed to be halfway to the Moon. During their live stream, they stated they were halfway to the Moon, and yet the Moon appeared much smaller than it does on Earth. In their Hello World image here, only a portion of Africa and a bunch of ocean is shown, leaving the entire other 6 continents to impossibly fit on the other 50% of their CGI globe. In addition to this, they took another similar shot called Dark Side of the Earth, where the exact same cloud patterns are shown as in Hello World. Some people are claiming these images were taken only minutes apart from one another, but as you can see directly from NASA.gov, they state that one was taken on April 2nd and the other was taken on April 3rd. Either way, if they were taken on different days, how could the clouds stay the same? And if NASA has written it wrong on their own website, and these were taken the same day, how can the brightness of Earth change so much when the Sun, the only light source in space, is fully eclipsed by the Earth? They also show Earth images like this, where part of the Earth globe is completely dark, hidden behind a Terminator line. How is it that Earth can be shown 3 totally different ways like this? Fully lit, dimly lit, and completely dark. Finally, let's take a look at some video glitches proving they are using CGI, or more specifically, augmented virtual reality, to create all the floating objects the crew interacts with on the spacecraft. They are constantly playing with stuffed toys, their food, the microphone, and other objects to convince the public that they're really floating in outer space and not simply suspended on wires in a studio. But watch as this food pouch spins near this astronaut's face. You can see as the edge grazes his forehead, it glitches out and goes right through, rather than realistically touching his face. There is no change in direction of the pouch from hitting his head, and instead it just continues floating right through, as if he wasn't there at all. Now pay attention to the red spot on the white pouch. As the pouch spins around slowly, the red dot doesn't spin with the pouch. For several frames, you can see the red dot stay in exactly the same shape and space, not realistically moving and turning with the rest of the bag. Then, as the bag continues to turn, at one point, you can see the red dot just vanishes completely. For several turns, the bag continues spinning around, but the red dot is nowhere to be found. And then, finally, after some more turns, the red dot mysteriously and inexplicably reappears. This is because these are digital and not physical objects which they are interacting with, using a technology called augmented virtual reality. By wearing special VR contact lenses, you are able to see a digital overlay of pre-rendered interactable 3D objects within your physical 3D space. The objects do not exist in physical space, but are seen and interactable live in real time through the use of this technology. Remember, NASA takes over $70 million per day of American taxpayer money. A big-budget Hollywood movie like Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock, was filmed 100% on Earth, using nothing but wires, green screens, and CGI. That movie cost $100 million to make. That's NASA's budget for a day and a half. Imagine what kind of movie can be made with NASA's yearly budget of $24 billion. In fact, you don't have to imagine, because this entire Artemis II charade and everything else from NASA is exactly that. A big-budget Hollywood production made with the express purpose of disseminating this propaganda into the minds of the masses. The loyal NASA fanboy sycophants will try to make excuses and brush these impossible anomalies and wild discrepancies under the rug. But the more discerning amongst us are waking up, and I'm seeing this Artemis mission backfire as many more people are finally seeing through the lies.
Thank you, Eric, for your in-depth investigation on the matter, revealing those details with a thought-provoking question each one should ponder upon. Indeed, many people are finally seeing through the lies. For so long, we have been manipulated and lied to. Think about that. Fool no more. Hello? Continue with Operation Epic Fury. President Trump addressed the nation regarding that ongoing operation. He highlighted successful strikes against Iranian military targets and criticized NATO allies for a lack of support in securing the Strait of Hormuz. By the late March, U.S. officials reported striking over 10,000 targets inside Iran that has significantly crippled the regime's power projection. The U.S. Navy is currently enforcing an ironclad blockade from the Gulf of Oman to be open oceans to maximize economic and military pressure. President Trump's own words last week captured the chaos of the whole theater perfectly, and I quote, "For those people, fewer in number now than ever before that are reading the failing news in New York Times or watching the fake news CNN, that think I am anxious to end the war, if you would even call it that, with Iran, please be advised that I am possibly the least pressured person ever to be in this position. Iran is having a very hard time figuring out who their leader is. This infighting is crazy, and the U.S. has total control over Hormuz, which will remain sealed up tight until a deal is stopped." End of quote. Let us hear the latest update from the U.S. Secretary of War, Peter Hegseth, and General Kane. Thank you.
Ironclad blockade that grows more powerful by the day. From the Gulf of Oman to the open oceans, our Navy is enforcing this blockade without hesitation or apology. Now, as usual, There's a lot of false information out there. I'll say this, every ship that the U.S. believes meets our criteria, either Iranian ships or to and from Iranian ports, has been turned around. As of this morning, 34 total. Non-Iranian vessels are allowed to transit, and many have, including overnight. Not only is the blockade growing, in fact, a second aircraft carrier will join the blockade in just a few days, but this growing blockade is also gone global. Just this week, we seized 2 Iranian dark fleet ships in the Indo-Pacific region that had left Iranian ports before the blockade went into effect. They thought they'd made it out just in time. They did not. We seized their sanctioned ships, and we will seize more. Our blockade is growing and going global. For 47 years, Iran has been at war with America, killing our citizens, our soldiers, and our allies, while previous administrations looked the other way. The real endless war is the war that Iran has waged on us for 47 years. President Trump is the only president with the guts and moral clarity to finally do something about it. I see it every day behind closed doors. President Trump's fortitude is unshakable, and his mission is crystal clear. President Trump said it again yesterday. We have all the time in the world, and we're not anxious for a deal. And I hear him say it every day in private as well. Iran knows that they still have an open window to choose wisely. As we said previously, choose wisely at the negotiating table. All they have to do is abandon a nuclear weapon in meaningful and verifiable ways, or instead they can watch their regime's fragile economic state collapse under the unrelenting pressure of American power. A blockade as long as it takes, whatever President Trump decides. Because the bottom line remains the bottom line. Iran will never get a nuclear bomb. The choice is theirs, but with this blockade, the clock is not on their side.
Thank you, CS Span, for that report. Next, explosion in U.S. Congress is extremely rare. This month alone saw 3 resignations due to ethic oversight. Congress faces scrutiny for how it handles sex and money misconduct. California Democrat Representative Eric Savel, the 7th-term representative, resigned on April 14 after multiple women, including a former staffer, accused him of sexual assault and harassment. The scandal also forced him to suspend his campaign for California governor while defining the most serious allegation. Savel apologized for mistaking in judgment. In addition, Texas Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez resigned the same day after admitting to an inappropriate affair with a staff member who later died by suicide. Gonzalez had previously denied the claims, calling them blackmail, before submitting his resignation to avoid a potential explosion vote. And just as it wasn't enough, on Tuesday, April 21st, Florida Democrat Representative Sheila Cherfulus McCormick was indicted for allegedly using disaster relief money to help fund her campaign, resigned from Congress. Another Floridian representative, Republican Corey Mills, is accused of sexual misconduct and campaign finance violation, among other defenses. Has told reporter he did nothing wrong. Well, for now, it sounds like a smoking gun. Watch for the more resignation to come, because the shaking is not over yet. Trut is just around the corner. Let's watch the tale from NBC News. Thank you.
Letter to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, effective April 14, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It has been my privilege to serve the residents of Texas's 23rd Congressional District. Signed sincerely, Tony Gonzalez, Member of Congress. I am deeply sorry to my family, staff, and constituents for mistakes and judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations made against me. However, I must take responsibility and ownership for the mistakes I did make. I am aware of efforts to bring an immediate expulsion vote against me and other members. Expelling anyone in Congress without due process within days of an allegation being made is wrong. But it's also wrong for my constituents to have me distracted from my duties. Therefore, I plan to resign my seat in Congress effective at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on April 14, 2026. I will work with my staff in the coming days to ensure they are able, in my absence, to serve the needs of the good people of the 14th Congressional District. Signed sincerely, Eric Swalwell.
McCormick has resigned. The announcement came just minutes before the House Ethics Committee was set to discuss her punishment for violating more than 24 rules. The Florida Democrat is also facing federal criminal charges, accused of stealing $5 million in COVID disaster relief funds. In a statement posted to X, Sheriff McCormick said the investigation was a witch hunt. She is the third House member to resign since last Monday, following former Congressman Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez.
Thank you, NBC News, for those reports. Thank you very much. Well, equally important, President Trump was evacuated from a gala dinner with news media on Saturday, April 25th. As shooting at the Washington Hilton sent cabinet member ducking under tables and turned the swapping venue into a massive crime scene. Federal and local law enforcement officials said a suspect believed to be from California was taken into custody. The president praised the quick response of law enforcement. He said one officer was injured in the shooting and is receiving treatment. Let us hear the tale from NBC News. Thank you.
News out of Washington, D.C. and the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where President Trump and other high-ranking White House officials have just been evacuated from the Washington Hilton after loud noises were heard in the lobby. This is happening right now in Washington, D.C. If you look on your screen, you see guests being escorted out of the dinner. The dinner was set to start around 8 o'clock. The president was set to make remarks, the first time that he was attending as the president, having skipped the event throughout his first term as well as last year. Again, the president has been evacuated from the Washington Hilton ahead of his remarks at the White House Correspondents' Dinner after loud noises were heard in the lobby. It is unclear exactly what those loud noises were, but clearly nobody was taking any chances. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is at the dinner tonight, and he joins us now on the phone with the very latest of what's going on. Gabe, what can you tell us?
Jessica, it's a very confusing situation right here on the ballroom floor, which is where we are. We were sitting at a table close to several high-ranking officials. As you mentioned, they were evacuated. Just to my left was Secretary Marco Rubio. He was evacuated.
Please stand by. We'll have an announcement in just a minute.
And now,
we will be
as you might be able to hear, there was an announcement that said that this dinner will be resuming shortly. Some positive news. It is unclear exactly what happened, Jessica. There was a lot of confusion. We were in the middle of the salad portion of the evening. The president of the White House Correspondents Association had just given brief remarks. We had just heard the national anthem played. The president and the first lady had come into the room, and we were awaiting his remarks as the evening went on. It was very calm, energetic room, thousands of journalists as well as government officials here. And as you mentioned, this is the first time that the president, President Trump, has attended this dinner. Now, what happened, all of a sudden, Secret Service came into the room, evacuated the president, evacuated several high-ranking officials. It is unclear exactly what happened. You have spoken to a witness who says that this person heard what appeared to be gunshots in the room above the ballroom. Again, heard what appeared to be gunshots in the room above the ballroom. Unclear exactly who fired those shots. Unclear if they were in fact gunshots. It's just a witness said what appeared to sound like a gunshot. Again, we have no indication that any officials were hurt, but at this point, the Secret Service evacuated the president, And again, it is still a very confusing scene here on the ballroom. We just heard a few moments ago that this dinner will resume. Unclear in what fashion that will be. We're expecting some sort of an announcement from the White House Correspondents Association at this point. And Jessica, I can't underscore just how dramatic of a shift this has been just in the last few minutes. There was a lot of gratitude from the White House Correspondents Association that the president had chosen to attend this dinner, which celebrates the First Amendment. The president was sitting here, again, he was salad course of this meal when all of a sudden, with no announcement, he was evacuated along with several high-ranking officials. We're trying to determine exactly what happened and what caused that evacuation. But that, again, that's all we know at this point as we try to sort this all out. And as we try to find out, the president, as we understand it, may be heading back to the White House, but we actually don't know for certain. We're trying to sort that all out.
Wow. Seems like history repeated itself. Thank you very much, Dave Gutierrez, for that report. Next, we continue with the royal touching down on U.S. soil. King Charles III and Queen Camilla arrived in the United States on April 27 for a 4-day state visit to Washington and New York, marking his first trip to the U.S. since becoming king in 2022. The visit aims to strengthen U.S. and UK relations and celebrate the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The U.S. national anthem plays across the tarmac as King Charles III and Queen Camilla officially touched down at Joint Base Andrews. This marked a monumental moment in diplomacy, the first state visit by a British monarch to the United States during the Trump presidency. Let us watch the tape. Thank you.
Big story of the hour, a royal welcome for King Charles and Queen Camilla at Joint Base Andrews a short time ago. We expect to see the two again shortly when President Trump greets them at the White House. They're kicking off their first official U.S. trip with a visit to Washington, where King Charles will give an address to Congress tomorrow, followed by a state dinner. The royals will then travel to New York City and Virginia. The 4-day trip comes as the U.S. and U.K. are largely at odds over the conflict in Iran, and security concerns persist after the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. Joining me now from London, Fox News senior correspondent Benjamin Hall. Benjamin?
Yeah, Will, good to see you today. And yes, look, you laid it out perfectly right there. There are two really different sides to this visit that we're going to see. One is going to be the pomp and the ceremony. You know, it's President Trump's first state visit that he's hosting at the White House in this term. There's going to be an inspection of the troops, larger than we've seen at the White House before, with 500 troops from all branches of the service. And there's going to be King Charles giving the first ever speech, his speech to both houses of Congress, and we'll be watching that closely. And he'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary of independence from the UK, of course. But there is so much more at play right here, because as you pointed out, there are so many cracks right now between the US and the UK. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, was not there to back up President Trump when he attacked Iran. He did not allow UK bases to be used, and that has caused real harm. President Trump has come out and said that Keir Starmer is a coward, that he's no Churchill, and already looking at ways of perhaps moving away. And so many people are saying, can King Charles come here and say, look, the special relationship between the two countries is not just about politics. It's not one term. It's much longer. You look back at the last few hundred years and you look at the next few hundred years, and that's perhaps where the relationship should be based. And so, look, it's going to be an amazing few days. We'll see some remarkable things, the white tie dinner. We'll hear from both President Trump and the King, but curious eyes will be looking at what both the President says, what King Charles says tomorrow, and then we'll have a gathering of what exactly their real motives are.
All right. Benjamin Hall, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Hall and Fox News, for that report. Indeed, there's so much to play here. We're witnessing a dismantling of the old guard, per se, UK and the United States. Wow, there's a lot coming down the pipeline. Thank you very much. Stay tuned on that one. Actually, stay tuned on that one. Last but not least, latest development on alien and UFOs file disclosure. Last week, the US government entered a major phase of transparency regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, and potential extraterrestrial life. This push has been driven by both executive directive from President Trump and legislative pressure from Congress. Whistleblower Republican Tim Burchett claimed that classified briefing is received. He has received content information about extraterrestrial life so disturbing that it could cause the country to come unglued if revealed. However, President Trump announced that a formal review of classified material has uncovered many very interesting documents. He stated that the first tranche of this record will be released very, very soon. Let's turn our attention to the tale from News Nation. Thank you.
Documents are apparently from 1991. Do they confirm that top scientists at Los Alamos were investigating UFOs 35 years ago? Let's ask Jeremy Corbell himself. Hey, Jeremy. Were they? Were they investigating UFOs 35 years ago? What are these anomalous aerial phenomenon they were looking into?
Yeah, so they would call them atmospheric anomalies when they were keeping it hush-hush. We didn't have the cool term UAP to try to, allow people to investigate this. Absolutely. In this film, what you see, this kid, Michael Lazowski, he started filming my daily life. He saw what was happening when George Knapp and I were trying to get out the news about UAP. We're just trying to report the news. So this is a common average day for me. I'm a clearinghouse for sensitive UAP material. So these documents came in. It was from the head of cybersecurity at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and it is absolute proof that the U.S. had maintained a secret, decades-long program to uncover the intent and origin of those piloting UAPs. This designates a classified meeting. Who's going to be involved? From the CIA to NSA, you can see it right there.
But what exactly were they looking into? And does anything in these documents confirm what, for example, David Grush has been telling us now for a couple of years, which is that there was a secret program actually studying the remains of alien spacecraft or alien beings themselves?
Right, so you don't get the whole enchilada in these documents, but what you do get is clear evidence that at Los Alamos National Laboratory, at a classified level, they were investigating UFOs, UAP, the origins of them. So, look, every piece of evidence... Was that ever in dispute?
Was that ever in dispute?
Well, I mean, for decades, the U.S. government said, nothing to see here, move on. We don't study UAP. They said that after Project Blue Book, that there was nothing to see here. They don't study them. We now know that all of that is hogwash. But these documents prove it. They could prove it in the court of law.
Yeah. You've said this documentary is all about freedom of speech and the First Amendment. We just heard President Trump say, I'm going to release the UFO files. We've had two Republican congressmen come on my show this week to say he's got to do this. I saw it in a skiff, some of these videos, read these files. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and the American people are ready for it. Do you think that the president is actually going to do this?
Yeah, I actually believe that the president is going to release the UFO files to a degree. However, what we're asking for, what Congress is asking for, is very specifically 46 videos obtained by our intelligence communities and warfighters that show and demonstrate these incredible capabilities of UAP. Now, I have been exposed to the majority on that list. In fact, I'll just tell you, George Knapp and I did provide that list and much more to Congress, because we know those files exist from personal experience.
And you have a new UFO video that you just released. It's from an MQ-9 Reaper drone. These drones are everywhere now. And it caught a glimpse of an unknown object. It was over the Jordanian-Syrian border back in 2021. The UFO appears to mock the drone and then shows what some are calling sort of instantaneous acceleration. Explain.
Yeah, so not some are calling. Anybody that looks
Anybody
at this,
watching would call it.
Yeah, you can see it for yourself. This has stood the test of time when we release it. So this is actually number 2 on that list that is proposed to the president to release. It shows instantaneous acceleration. It is something that we cannot do because of inertial effect. We do not have war machines that can do this. Not only do you see this object, this UAP that's shaped like a mushroom, you see it move instantaneously. It does appear to mock the Reaper drone. As soon as it gets a weapons grade lock on it, that's when it kind of moves to the left and shoots off to the right. There's absolutely, this is hardcore physical evidence and proof, probably the best that we have in this FLIR footage. If you go back to the gimbal, the Tic Tac, all of this, you see great footage. This shows an observable that is only given to UAP, the ability to move instantaneously. That's the first observable that our government has identified.
Wow.
And this is their analysis,
Okay.
not mine.
All right. Jeremy Corbell, boy, if those videos come out, we're going to need you to come back on and tell us what we're looking at. Really appreciate it. Congrats on the documentary.
Thank you. Nothing is planned, it's provoked. It's time for people now to take the opportunity and make some noise and push our government to release the footage that they should be able to see.
Thanks, Elizabeth Vargas of News Nation. Jeremy Corbell, I couldn't agree more with you. Yes, it is time to push the government to release those files and declassify hidden technology that will benefit humanity at large. Thank you.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to MBNK. We are diving into some intriguing global headlines. So, let's jump right into the next news story. Remember, it's important to stay informed and engaged in global affairs. So, let's stay connected and keep each other in the loop about what's happening around the world. Again, don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more intriguing content coming up next.
Welcome back. Thank you. Now, let's turn our attention to European, Middle East, and Asia news coverage by our local news correspondent, Victoria. Thank you.
In with the UK, King Charles III has faced criticism for declining to issue an Easter message this year, despite sending greetings to Muslims for Ramadan. While Buckingham Palace confirmed that an Easter message is not an annual tradition like the Christmas speech, critics argue the decision disappoints Christians and creates a perceived imbalance, especially given the King's role as Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Let us watch the news.
King Charles is meant to be the defender of the faith, one faith. Yet the question must be asked, which faith is that to him? Buckingham Palace has announced the King won't be delivering an Easter message this year, despite having done so last year on Maundy Thursday, in which he couldn't resist mentioning Islam, by the way. I'll show you that in a moment. Now, the Easter message is not one the Palace releases every year, unlike the annual Christmas speech. Sure, that is fine. But if it's not tradition for the defender of the faith to acknowledge a Christian event, then why did King Charles issue a Ramadan message this year? Only a few weeks ago, on Shrove Tuesday, just before Lent, so during a Christian event, the King said wishing all Muslims in the UK, the Commonwealth and around the world a blessed and peaceful Ramadan. So, Eid Mubarak, but nothing for Christians this year, apart from a reference to him attending the Royal Maundy service. Just more pandering to Muslims. The King has even previously taken time out for personalised Ramadan messages.
Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak. Ladies and gentlemen, as Muslims across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth begin preparations to celebrate Eid after fasting for the holy month of Ramadan, I just wanted to convey my heartfelt best wishes to all who celebrate this festival.
And he even used last month's state banquet for another acknowledgement.
So as I close, Mr. President, in anticipation of Eid al-Fitr in Nigeria and across the world, I can only wish you and the millions of Muslims in our countries Eid Mubarak.
Not even the state banquet was safe from virtue signalling. Just this week, he met with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara at Buckingham Palace. This president was a militant Islamist and former al-Qaeda member. But he was welcomed with open arms at a time when Syria's churches are scaling back Easter celebrations after a Christian town was attacked. What on earth is a former member of a terrorist group doing, getting an invite to meet with the king, let alone at Buckingham Palace? Who does this king represent? And as I said earlier, he did give an Easter message last year, but somehow managed to refer to Islam. He said on Maundy Thursday, Jesus knelt and washed the feet of many of those who would abandon him. The love he showed when he walked the earth reflected the Jewish ethic of caring for the stranger and those in need, a deep human instinct echoed in Islam and other religious traditions. On a Christian holiday, the king still felt the need to warp in a more inclusive interfaith message. And look, I shouldn't be shocked by this, really. In 1993, Charles professed his love for Islam while he was a mere prince.
Islam is part of our past and our present in all fields of human endeavour. It has helped to create modern Europe. It is part of our own inheritance, not a thing apart. More than this, Islam can teach us today a way of understanding and living in the world which Christianity itself is the poorer for having lost.
Now, I'm a staunch monarchist, but I am not okay with the monarch's apparent obsession with Islam at a time when our social fibres have buckled, largely in part to a perversion of Islam that is incompatible with the West and our values.
King Charles is meant to be the defender of the faith, one faith, Mr. Giorgio said. Yet the question must be asked, which faith is that to him? Buckingham Palace has announced the king won't be delivering an Easter message this year. But if it's not tradition for the defender of the faith to acknowledge a Christian event, then why did King Charles issue a Ramadan message this year? That's food for thought. We need to really ponder on that one. Now, moving on to Spain. Spain approves a plan to grant legal status to thousands of immigrants and lacking right to stay in Spain, obviously. And this measure will affect those living in Spain for at least 5 months and who apply for international protection before the 31st of December 2025. Spain's long history of mass regularizations, the pull factor created by welfare and work permits, pressure on public services, and how Brussels is attempting to convert illegal immigration into legal migration rather than stopping it. I can see another Joe Biden terms with this move. Let us watch the news.
Left-wing government approved a plan on Tuesday to regularize around 500,000 undocumented migrants by decree. The measure applies to those living in Spain for at least 5 months who applied for international protection before the 31st of December 2025. Migration Minister Elma Saiz said the beneficiaries would be able to work in any sector in any part of the country.
Lo que estamos haciendo es, no mirar para otro lado, dignificar y reconocer a las personas que ya están en nuestro país y dar respuesta a una realidad con una coherencia que es la que tiene el Gobierno de España en su política migratoria, que pone en el centro los derechos humanos y que trabaja por una migración regular, ordenada y segura.
Applicants must have a clean criminal record. The regularization will also apply to their children who already live in Spain. The conservative and far-right opposition lashed out at the government, saying the regularization would encourage more illegal immigration. But Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says Spain needs migration to fill labour gaps and offset an ageing population, adding that migration accounted for 80% of Spain's dynamic economic growth in the last 6 years.
Well, let this be a warning that this historic move from Spain offers a very clear preview of where the wider Europe, including Britain, may be heading. Oops, by the way. the president of Spain is another George Soros puppet. Moving now on to France. France puts Freemasons Lodge Mafia on trial over murders and hit squads. At least 22 people, including intelligence and police officers, are on trial in France over an alleged Masonic Lodge assassin squad and mafia-style crimes. Let us watch the news.
22 people have gone on trial in France on charges of murder and other serious crimes, centered on members of a Masonic lodge accused of running hit squads. Those in the dock include 4 military personnel from France's Foreign Intelligence Service, 2 police officers, a retired domestic intelligence officer, a security guard and 2 business executives. One victim, who survived 2 assassination attempts, explains the consequences of the attacks.
Trouble du stress post-traumatique dont je n'arrive pas à sortir en fait depuis 6 ans, ça revient par épisode. Cancer et puis exclusion de ma profession également. Voilà, ça fait quand même beaucoup de choses.
Most of the accused, aged between 30 and 73, have no previous criminal records. They are accused of murder, attempted murders, aggravated assault and criminal conspiracy, all on behalf of a mafia network inside the former Athener Masonic Lodge in a Paris suburb.
Continuing with France. France is to ditch Windows for Linux to reduce reliance on US technology. A silent digital shift is underway and is bigger than it looks. France is replacing Windows with Linux to reduce reliance on US technology. Let us watch the news.
5 million government PCs to the open source system Linux. It's not because Macron hates Outlook or Excel though. It's part of a wider French push for more digital sovereignty, meaning reducing the country's digital dependencies. Right now, European countries, including Germany, are kind of trapped. Chips, cloud storage and code, most of it is provided from companies abroad. And this isn't just about administration. US tech is the backbone of Europe's cybersecurity and military. If your payment systems, your energy grid or your weapons run on tech you can't fix or control, the provider has a potential kill switch. And what happens to the data the systems process? The cooling of relations with the US under Trump has brought the whole issue even more into the European focus. Yet there is no easy fix. There are coordinated initiatives like Eurostack and even a declaration of digital independence signed by many EU companies. But it will be a long road to switch to alternative software, and it will be even harder to build the necessary infrastructure. France sees itself as the European frontrunner. The country is set to spend billions on digital transformation until 2030 for programs like the EU's Digital Decade Roadmap. By the way, replacing Windows on millions of government computers might save costs in the long run. Linux has already been rolled out to over 100,000 computers in the Gendarmerie Nationale. This move saves €2 million a year on license fees alone, according to government figures.
Well, there is bromance in Budapest as J.D. Vance and Orban celebrate a new era in US and Hungary relations. The smile said it all. Vice President J.D. Vance and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban shared a visibly warm and upbeat meeting in Budapest, with Orban declaring that a golden age in US and Hungary relations has officially begun, and the two leaders, who share a deep ideological alignment on immigration, national sovereignty, and pushback against globalist institutions, appear fully in sync, both in tone and in spirit. Vance's decision to fly to Budapest personally, amid an active war in Iran and a pan-domestic agenda, sent a powerful message. This friendship matters at the highest level. Let us watch the news.
We're going to do a press conference later. That's exactly right.
And it's because of philosophical reasons.
Yes, of course.
It's not about business, not about Thank you very much for being so kind to visit us, especially in the high moment of the world politics, when it's difficult to understand what's going on many points of the world. It's a good occasion to exchange our views and understanding of what's going on the global political scene, and how is the fight which is going for the soul of the West we have in Europe, and what about it in America. And of course, because the special relationship between the Americans and the Hungarians, now we have the American-Hungarian Friendship Day. And thank you very much that you are so kind to upgrading that day by your presence. So thank you very much. On behalf of the Hungarian people, I just welcome you wholeheartedly.
Like you said, the relationship, friendship between Hungary and the United States is very important to us, in part because we love the Hungarian people and this amazing nation and culture, but in part because the president loves you, and so do I, because you're such an important part of what has made Europe strong and prosperous. You're one of the true statesmen, I would say one of the only true statesmen in Europe, one of the few people who can talk to people from all over the world, can play the role of peacemaker, can play the role of economic statesman. We have a lot of great economic relationships, trade relationships that we're going to talk about today, but most of all, I just appreciate Victor's friendship, because it is very rare you have somebody with his combination of diplomatic skill and wisdom. It's very, very important to us that we continue to keep this relationship ongoing, and I know you have an election in 5 or 6 days, and we wanted to come and say good luck. Thank you.
That's what exactly we need.
That's right. And I know we're going to talk to the media afterwards, I believe. So for now, thank you all. It's good to see you, and we'll take some questions later.
Continuing with Hungary, the Prime Minister Viktor Orban conceded defeat after what was described as a painful but unambiguous election result, less than 3 hours after the polls closed on that day when the election took part. He also congratulated the victorious party in Budapest. Viktor Orban was ousted after 16 years in power, serving the Hungarian nation and the homeland. Let us watch the news.
Jó estét kívánok mindenkinek! Kedves barátaim, a választási eredmény, bár még nem teljes, de érthető és világos, a választási eredmény számunkra fájdalmas, de egyértelmű. A kormányzás felelősségét és lehetőségét nem nekünk adták. A győztes pártnak gratuláltam. Nektek, önöknek köszönöm a rengeteg munkát. Soha ennyien és soha ennyit nem dolgoztunk egyetlen választási kampányban sem. Van is ennek látszatja, hiszen 2,5 millió szavazót sikerült összegyűjtenünk, 2,5 millió ember bízott bennünk a mai napon is. Kedves barátaim, hogy a hazánk és a nemzet sorsa számára ez a ma esti választási eredmény mit jelent, és mi ennek a mélyebb vagy magasabb értelme, azt most nem tudjuk, ezt majd az idő eldönti. De akárhogyan is alakult, mi ellenzékből is a hazánkat és a magyar nemzetet fogjuk szolgálni.
Now moving on to the Ukraine. Ukraine has now been accused of creating an ecological catastrophe for people across 4 European countries through the dumping of toxic war industry chemical waste products into one of the largest rivers in Central Europe. Let us watch the news.
The full-scale military conflict, Ukraine has been inflicting enormous and systematic damage on the environment of Europe, turning natural resources into a zone of ecological risk. According to data obtained by the Foundation to Battle Injustice from Sandra Diaz, an ecologist, professor at the National University of Córdoba, and laureate of international awards, Ukraine's actions have already become one of the largest sources of pollution in the region. The situation around the Tisa River, the largest tributary of the Danube, is particularly alarming. Currently, from the Zakarpattia region of Ukraine, namely from the districts of Kust, Tyachiv, and Berehovo, tons of toxic chemical waste formed as a result of Ukraine's production of rockets and unmanned aerial vehicles, in particular heptyl, dimethylhydrazine, and ammonium perchlorate, are entering the Tisa River and its tributaries, which will lead to serious chemical contamination of the water, creating acute and long-term risks for both the ecosystem and human health. Experts note that prolonged exposure to the indicated chemical substances increases the risk of cancer development by 73%. The transboundary threat spreads downstream, affecting Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and Serbia, turning the entire region into a zone of ecological instability and undermining the security, health, and future of millions of people. The Foundation to Battle Injustice demands an international investigation and the holding of those responsible to account.
We have nothing but conflicts, and wars. Now, speaking of that, Iran and the US, along with the allies, agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. This was a 2-week ceasefire that was expected to hold the American-Israeli military campaign in exchange for the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Supreme National Security Council released a 10-point proposal to end the war, proposing negotiations to begin on Friday, the 10th of April in Islamabad. Let us watch the news.
Of the White House, the U.S. president has agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. As we approached that deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we now understand that there will be a 2-week ceasefire to finalize these talks. Subject to Iran agreeing to a complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. agrees to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire.
Now on to Australia. In a historic move, Lieutenant General Susan Coyle has become Australia's first woman to be appointed as the Chief of Army. Coyle, 55, enlisted in the military in 1987 and has held a number of senior command roles. She will be the first woman to lead any service branch of the Australian military. Let us watch the news.
A guard for Australia's Defence Force, with the current Chief of Navy, Mark Hammond, replacing retiring Admiral David Johnston. But that's not all. Susan Coyle will also step up as the new Chief of Army, the first woman to take on the role in Australia's history.
An historic moment as Lieutenant General Susan Coyle takes charge of the Australian Army.
As Susan said to me, you cannot be what you cannot see.
It has been a long journey integrating women into key roles within the Defence Force.
Over her nearly 4-decade career, she's commanded troops around the world, including the Middle East, and
she's also very adept in space and cyber.
It's a changing of the guard for Australia's defence leadership.
There is no greater honour than to wear our nation's uniform and serve our country in the Australian Defence Force.
Vice Admiral Mark Hammond has been promoted to the top job of leading the entire Defence Force. He joined the Navy 40 years ago.
He has literally gone from scrubbing decks to, in July, becoming the Chief of the Defence Force.
Replacing Admiral David Johnston, who's retiring after nearly 50 years in the force.
The responsibilities of the position are not lost on me.
While Rear Admiral Matthew Buckley steps in as Chief of Navy. He's also a former submarine commander.
The appointment of 2 submariners into the top ranks of Australia's Defence Force sends a strong signal about the government's focus on AUKUS and modernising the ADF as the world deals with growing uncertainty.
Well, all I can say to Australia is congratulations for this very first lady to take on such a huge role with the military, Australian military. Congratulations to Susan Coyle. Now, this is all I've got time for, and this is the end of my news. So back to you, Veronique.
Wow. Thank you very much, Victoria, for that extensive Middle East, European, and Asia news. And indeed, you have a lot happening right there. Well, who is King Charles representing really? Oh my God. Is Europe suffering from immigration? Well, time will tell. Wow, thank you. Thank you again for that changing of the guard also in Australia. Beautiful, beautiful. Welcome back again. Moving on with the last item on today's agenda, which is health update. Let us hear the tale from our health news correspondent, Aida. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronique. Welcome to this month's health news. So let's start with the first news. Our first news is that the online platform, especially the AI, is bringing false and misleading health information. So let us watch.
Association is sounding the alarm over false and misleading health information found online. In a recent survey, 97% of doctors reported having to intervene after a patient followed online medical advice, including from AI sources. And with me now is Man Zawadi. He's an associate professor at McGill University who studies health law, novel technologies, and ethics. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So why are people turning to AI to find health information, and how are they using it exactly?
Yeah, I mean, people are turning to AI for a very simple reason. It's fast, accessible, and actually feels a bit like human. If you're worried about a symptom late at night, AI is available instantly. It answers in plain language, and that's incredibly powerful if you think about it, especially in a system where access to care can be slow or fragmented. But there's something deeper going on, I think. People aren't just looking for facts. They're also looking for some kind of reassurance, interpretation, or guidance. I mean, AI gives the impression of all three.
What are some of the risks then in relying on AI chatbots or other online sources when you're looking for health advice?
Yeah, I mean, the danger is subtle, but it's actually significant. It's not just that AI can be wrong, it's that it can be wrong in a way that actually feels right. It produces answers that are confident, as I said, well-written and seem tailored to you, but it doesn't actually know your medical history, your medications, your risk factors, or the context that physicians rely on to make their decisions. So it's often a mix of correct general information combined with assumptions that may not apply to you. And in medicine, that gap actually matters. And there's also another issue, one of bias and incomplete data. If the system wasn't trained on diverse populations, its recommendations may be less accurate for some groups.
So this must make a doctor's job a little more difficult when that patient who's maybe found misinformation online eventually shows up in their clinic.
Yeah, and we're already seeing that very clearly, especially with that recent report. I mean, many physicians, as you mentioned correctly, as part of their consultation, they spend time addressing or correcting misinformation, and that has several effects. I think first, it takes more time now away from diagnosis and treatment, and it can also complicate trust, especially if a patient arrives convinced that they've read this, whatever they read online is actually correct. So there's also a more structural, I would say, shift that's happening. The role of the physician is evolving. There are no longer just providers of care, today. There are actually increasingly interpreters and validators of information, and that's not trivial.
What would you like to see happen then to prevent people from being harmed by this kind of misinformation that they might find through AI or other online sources?
Yeah, I would say, we need to think about this from multiple levels. From a policy perspective, we were almost with one of the most comprehensive AI acts in Canada before Parliament was prorogated almost a year ago, and the government is currently looking into this again. So I think that's going to be very important for us to see again. Like the EU has an act, and other countries like South Korea. But there's also something on the technology side. I mean, AI tools that will be providing health information should be treated more like medical tools. That means proper validation, transparency about limitations, and also clear accountability. But on the public side as well, we need to equip people because they're the ones on the front lines, with simple ways to navigate this information, how to question sources, when to recognize uncertainty, and know when to seek professional advice. And lastly, the health system itself. We need to reduce the gaps that drive people to rely on these tools in the first place. If access to care is difficult, then people will always look elsewhere.
Right, and we do see that in Quebec, with a lack of family doctors, a shortage of family doctors. People are looking for other ways to find that information. Manzawadi, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so how is the war in Iran affecting the production and the supply of medications? How is it affecting Big Pharma, especially with the blockage on Hormuz? If you want to find out, let us watch.
One of the world's busiest shipping lanes, and the global pharmaceutical supply is getting caught in the middle. American and Iranian blockades of the Strait of Hormuz could eventually lead to higher drug prices and shortages. The U.S. gets nearly half of its generic prescriptions from India, which is one of several nations that rely heavily on the strait for medication transport. Indian drug makers also use the waterway for shipments of oil and petroleum-based ingredients to make solvents, coatings, packaging, even the plastic and IV bags and syringes. And the global helium supply is in jeopardy following Iran's attack last month on Qatar's Ras Laffan liquefied natural gas facility. Helium is an essential coolant used in MRI machines. Experts with the Council on Foreign Relations Global Health Program say the conflict could drive up helium prices and reduce supplies since Qatar relies on the Strait of Hormuz to transport gas, which has a short shelf life. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder joins us now. She's also editor-at-large for public health at KFF Health News. So, doctor, how concerned should people be when it comes to this shortage? What's going to be affected?
So we haven't seen shortages yet, but we can anticipate there may be some shortages in a couple months. Half of our generic drugs come from India, and we need oil and petrochemicals, or India needs oil and petrochemicals as a raw ingredient for the development, for the manufacture of many generic drugs. And with the 40% of their drug exports going through the Strait of Hormuz, with much of that traffic having been stopped, we've seen just in March alone a 25% drop in Indian exports of drugs. And so the drugs that are most implicated are high volume generic drugs. So things like blood pressure medications, statins, which are medications taken for high cholesterol, metformin for diabetes, as well as some common antibiotics like amoxicillin. And then the other group of drugs that's also impacted here are temperature-sensitive drugs. Now, those are usually shipped on planes, but through airports like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and those have been shut down. Now, those are coming back online, but the medications that would be implicated there are things like insulin, some cancer chemotherapies, as well as certain vaccines.
Okay, so clinical trials also, those are pretty common in that part of the globe because the chronic diseases that are in the area, also because they can fast track a lot of trials that might have more regulation or red tape here, right?
Yeah, that is right. We do a lot of research overseas for that reason, because you have the right patient population, again, with chronic diseases, as you mentioned, but sometimes there's fewer regulatory hurdles. And so sometimes that's how we go about doing things. It may be cheaper for certain drug companies to do that. I think one thing that's important to emphasize is that even if the shipping lanes were to open tomorrow, it's going to take months to clear the backlog. So logistics companies estimate that for every week of pause in shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, it takes a week and a half to clear that 1 week of backlog. So, if you add up how many weeks we've already had, you're looking at time to relocate containers, reset schedules, stock warehouses. And then on top of that, there's been damage to petrochemical facilities, which are providing the raw materials again. And so that's going to constrain both supply and drive up cost of those raw materials.
So what should people do in the meantime?
So for now, most pharmacies have 30 to 60 days of supply, but talk to your doctor and see if you have an up-to-date prescription and refill.
Dr. Celine Gounder, thank you as always.
Wow. I hope you are listening carefully to this news, especially what medication were made of. Okay, so that make you think, do I really want to have to need that medication? I don't think so. So let's go to the next news. The next news is very important because we have a lot of diabetic patients in the country, especially in the world, and it's increasing every time. So right now they're having a recall in one of the automatic glucose monitors that are causing 7 deaths and many other issues. So if you know anybody that's using this particular monitor that we are going to be showing in the news, please make sure that you notify. So let us watch.
Its Freestyle Libre 3 glucose monitors offer diabetics painless readings, blood sugar levels taken not with a finger prick, but a sensor on the arm. The readings sent to a monitor or cell phone. For Devontae Ford, a licensed caregiver, it was a valuable tool attending to his dad, Michael, bedbound by diabetes.
What are your memories of him dealing with diabetes?
Always like the finger prick, that was something I always seen him do.
So diabetes was just part of his life?
It was something that his mother, grandmother, so something that ran in the family as well. So that was something that he already knew how to manage.
And since 2024, managed with the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus.
Ultimately, he was heavily reliant on it.
But Devontae says it failed last November 16th.
What happened that morning?
So in that morning, the blood sugar is always pretty low.
Devontae gave him sweetened coffee as usual, but the monitor readings stayed low.
So more coffee, a little bit more sugar, and it started to creep up a little bit.
Only Devontae says to fall again.
I thought something was pretty strange with that.
He says no amount of carbohydrates could get his dad's blood sugar to stay elevated.
I noticed that he was speaking really softly, and then I ended up calling 911 anyway.
By the time the paramedics arrived, Devontae's dad was unresponsive.
He had ended up coding, so he had a cardiac arrest, and he couldn't breathe on his own at that point, so they had to do CPR to him. And then when they told me the blood sugar level, they said it was 551.
5 times higher than what it should have been, and 8 times higher, Devontae says, than what the monitor showed. Michael never regained consciousness and died the next day, November 17th, at the hospital. 7 days later, Abbott announced an international recall for the Freestyle Libre 3 and Libre 3 Plus sensors for incorrect low readings. As of January 7th, the company has reported 860 serious injuries and 7 deaths.
How did you find out that the monitor was being recalled?
So my mom, she went on her computer and she said a notification popped up, and she said before she even actually clicked on it, she just knew, because we already knew that something was wrong with it, and it felt like divine intervention.
Devontae is now suing Abbott. The company has not yet responded to the lawsuit, but in a statement to NBC News, Abbott says, "We are deeply saddened by this situation. We are committed to the safety and quality of our products. We take all adverse event reports seriously. Each situation is thoroughly documented, investigated, and shared with regulatory authorities as required." Dr. Melanie Jay works with diabetics as the director of NYU Langone's obesity research program.
Should patients rely on these monitors?
I think these monitors are a great tool, but as with any medical device or any tool, there can be malfunctions and there can be ways that they're not used properly. And so it's just not to blindly rely on them.
Devontae says he never noticed a problem before that morning in November.
We just never had a scare ever, and this was the first one and the last one.
Now he can't stop thinking about it.
And Anne is joining us now. Anne, we so appreciate you doing this reporting here. What if you are like, wait, I know somebody who has one of these monitors, so I have one. What do you do with them?
So there are about 3 million of them were made, Hallie, and the FDA says anyone who has one of these very specific Abbott sensors should stop using them and discard them immediately.
And then what about if you think you are having something wrong with your glucose readings? In other words, if something seems off or a little bit suspicious, folks should have a backup, right?
Yeah, you always want to have a backup plan, and that backup plan is that finger prick glucose monitor that you want to have, and you should turn to that if something seems off. But in Devontae's case, he said there didn't seem off until that morning, and by the time they figured it out, there wasn't time to do the finger prick.
Wow, wow, wow. Now, I want to ask something here. If you are diabetic and you have one of the Freestyle Libre monitors, make sure that you keep your all pricking finger glucose monitor. And remember that every glucose monitor, especially the ones with the finger that you're supposed to calibrate, it comes with the liquid to calibrate it in the package before you use it every single day. And if you see that you having no change in your other machine, then you check with your finger. So this that happened to this gentleman will not happen to you. Okay, so let's go to our next news. Our next news is talking about Connecticut. The state of Connecticut is celebrating Liver and Health Day. It's something that is not celebrated in the whole United States, but they're celebrating it just in Connecticut, and they're going to talk a little bit about liver health. And then after that, they're going to be talking about, spring is coming. And allergies are coming. Every spring they come. But they're saying that this year, the allergies are stronger than ever. So why are they stronger than ever? So let us watch.
I'm here with Dr. Syed Hussein of Trinity Health of New England, and it is time for our Health Matters this good morning.
Good morning.
Now, first up, I want to talk about Connecticut recently becoming the first state to have a designated liver health day. So I'm sure there's a lot of significance of this day. Why is it important for people to keep tabs on their liver health?
Yeah, so let's talk about this. Extremely important organ, right, in the body. And for optimum health, good health, you need to make sure you have a good liver as well, just like some of the other organs in the body. So there are a few pillars that viewers need to keep in mind that ultimately lead to a good, healthy liver. Liver that is chronically damaged over a period of time can lead to certain outcomes that are not good, such as cirrhosis of the liver, for instance, with chronic inflammation. So let's talk about things that will protect the liver. So first and foremost is your diet. So we have a lot of ultra-processed foods, a lot of unhealthy eating habits. So making sure we have healthy habits equates to hopefully a better liver in terms of good health. Making sure that you have antioxidants and green leafy vegetables, all the good things that we've spoken about previously as well matters for the liver. Making sure you have cut down on your alcohol consumption, because that can ultimately, all of these things put together can lead to a condition known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which can progress, by the way. And usually it's very asymptomatic, which means patients may not experience any symptoms till later on. So making sure you cut down on your alcohol consumption is important. Making sure you deal with stress in a way where either you meditate or you have some, recreational activities that you can participate in to reduce that stress. All of these taken together are important factors. What are some red flags to look out for? So if you have weight gain, especially around the belly, if you have fatigue, if you have yellowed eyes, jaundice, for instance, all of these things are warning signs. But make sure you have your annual follow-up visit with your primary care doctor, because there's certain blood tests that can be done also to assess how the liver is doing and how you are in terms of your fat content in your body as well.
Okay, good deal. And the next one I know is affecting a lot of folks out there, allergies. So if you think your allergies are particularly bad this season, you may not be making it up. So doctor, is there some truth to this? And, why is it so much worse?
Yeah, let's talk about this as well. So it's the season, but however, most viewers will agree to this, that we've had quite a few warmer days than usual over the last couple of weeks. So that leads to plants blooming earlier than usual. Plants get a little confused, and which means they will release more pollen than usual at this time of year. So, which all equates to more allergies. 1 in 3 Americans will have some degree of allergy symptoms they will experience. So maybe sneezing, itchy, watery eyes, cough. So if you fit into that category, make sure you have a plan. Make sure, especially when you're outdoors, if you have underlying asthma, for instance, and pollen and this season can exacerbate those symptoms, make sure you have your inhaler with you when you're going out. If you're indoors, make sure your HVAC filters have been replaced. Use a HEPA filter, for instance. So there are things that we can do in addition to making sure, like I said, your meds are there, handily available should you experience any symptoms, especially when it comes to breathing.
Yes. Now, is there a certain point when someone should maybe go beyond over-the-counter medications and see an allergist?
If you're, you talk to your primary care doctor first, depending on the duration of your symptoms and severity of your symptoms, especially when it comes to breathing difficulties, then yes, definitely seek medical attention.
All right. And lastly, I've been seeing a ton of videos about anti-inflammatory diets on my social media feeds, and a lot of people are trying them, saying that it's helped with their body, the way they feel, helped them lose weight. Is there any truth to that? And can you break down how it's beneficial?
Yeah, let's talk about this as well. So we know chronic inflammation is the foundation for a lot of different diseases. So diabetes, heart disease, cancer, arthritis, all have a bedrock foundation of chronic inflammation. And so reducing that inflammation doesn't necessarily mean you have to take pills or medication. There's things you can do to improve your diet, for instance. There's things in the grocery store that you can make sure are included in your daily diet. So by that, I mean green leafy vegetables, fruits such as strawberries and oranges, things that may have more antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties to tamp down some of these inflammatory effects. Fish, for instance, olive oil. Your typical Mediterranean diet, by definition, will fit into that category.
Okay, good to know. And I know there's a ton of those recipes and cookbooks to help folks adhere to those
And less, if I could add, Symphony, less ultra-processed food, too.
Less. Yes. I guess that's always good all around. Huh?
Yes, more healthy, more natural eating.
Okay.
Is always good.
All right, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Back to you.
Well, thank you for watching, and back to you, Veronique.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to MBN. We are diving into some intriguing global headlines. So, let's jump right into the next news story on the agenda. Remember, it's important to stay informed and engaged in global affairs. So, let's stay connected and keep each other in the loop about what's happening around the world. Again, don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more intriguing content coming up next.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aida, for the latest improvement on health. Indeed, as the latest video said, we need to eat less and lesser processed food and eat a lot of vegetable and great food. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are indeed living in an unprecedented time, a world filled with the tension, simmer, and collective mind absorbing another layer of enduring stress, political friction, and perhaps a bit of creeping apathy. Yet, one must step back and ask the question that cuts through the distraction or noise. What are they trying to tell us? Something is not right. There's more to the story told. Don't just accept everything as face value. Do your own due diligence, connect the dots, and draw your own conclusion. Well, this wrap up today's edition of MBNK Special News Report on the Global Headlines Update for April 2026. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember to smash that like button and subscribe for more updates. Stay informed and stay safe out there. I am Veronique Lawson. Have a great evening and see you next time. Signing off. Thank you.